My name's Christopher Baynes. I'm the Bureau Chief of the Albany County District Attorney's Financial Crimes Unit, and this is...
My name is Bill Mosher. I'm a Senior Investigator with the New York State Police Financial Crimes Unit.
And we're here today to talk about fraud prevention for municipalities in New York. Bill and I both have a lot of experience in this area. Bill's been investigating financial crime for 10 years, and I've been the head of our unit for 7 years. And in that time, we've seen dozens and dozens of embezzlement cases, some specific to municipalities in New York. So, Bill, off the top, with embezzlement, who are you looking for?
Well, the important thing is that it can be anyone, and very often, as you know, we've seen that it's usually the last person somebody suspects when they find out that they've lost money and they find out the source, and it's the person that everybody trusted the most.
Right, like in my experience, it's often been someone who has a lot of responsibilities but does not make a lot of money. And maybe there's some resentment involved, and that's why they start stealing, or maybe it's just that easy access, and maybe they feel like they have less to lose. But that is often the case. A long-time employee with access to cash or checks, and again, not highly paid.
Yeah, and whenever we talk about fraud and these kinds of things, there's generally three conditions that exist when somebody decides to commit a crime. I mean, it's a bold step that somebody will take, and usually those three things will have to be an opportunity to commit the crime, some kind of perception of pressure, whether they're having a financial pressure or they've just gotten themselves in over their head, and then they have some kind of justification in their mind why they may deserve what they're taking, or it's only going to be a loan, or one of those things. So those are the three things that generally exist when fraud occurs.
I mean, and those pressures can be someone has an addiction, say, to gambling or drugs, or it could be they have a boyfriend or girlfriend or a spouse who has financial issues of their own, and this person is stealing for them. So those are really the two bigger categories. Now, when we start looking at fraud, what is the first thing a municipality should look for in order to detect an ongoing fraud?
Well, obviously, a lot of these cases come to light years down the road, and it's only because a glitch in this person's system has occurred. Frequently, the perpetrators of these frauds are the people that never take a vacation because they want to stay in control of everything all the time. So a lot of the times, it's years and years before somebody even shows that fraud has been occurring. And the way to combat that is to take a look at things, audit your systems every once in a while. Don't rely on one person to do all the jobs all the time, and that's very, very important.
And what is also interesting is it's not always money that's going out the door. Sometimes it's a Robin Hood situation. I had a case last year where an employee of a municipality was crediting friends and family with payments to this municipality for taxes or water fees or whatever the case may be, just not actually taking any money for themselves, but again, the municipality was losing money on that nonetheless. Another thing to look for would be lifestyle changes.
Right. When you see somebody that just doesn't make sense. One of the famous cases of that was Aldrich James, who was a spy with the CIA, who lived in a gigantic mansion and drove a Jaguar to work every day, and
he got a government salary like you and me.
Exactly. I don't see a lot of police officers driving Jaguars, and those kinds of things should stick out to you, and you should ask questions.
Another area that is a lot of cities, towns, villages, they have rules. They have rules for handling money, rules for handling cash receipts, rules for handling accounts payable, but
sometimes they aren't enforced. And it's important to say a lot of places, and the smaller you get in the more rural areas or smaller places, sometimes those rules don't even exist. And that's step one. You want to make sure that you have rules in place to try and avoid these things. You want to have a system where this is how we're going to handle our money. When it comes in, a receipt is going to be printed every single time, no exceptions. When the money goes, it's going to go into a specific cash drawer. It's not going to go into somebody's desk drawer. And so having those rules is the first step, but you're 100% right. Time and time again, when we go in to investigate one of these cases, we will find that the rules were in place, but they only existed on paper. And that really starts from the top down. Management has to stick to the rules and insist everybody else does too. Because if you have a culture where people don't obey the rules don't mean anything. And the rules are in place for a reason. And if they're not being obeyed, that's one of our big red flags.
Another great way to prevent, and again, it's expensive, but believe me, not doing this can be expensive too, is to have an outside auditor look at your books every year. I mean, it doesn't have to be KPMG. You can bring in a local accounting company that won't charge nearly as much, but it's so key to have that outside look because, as we said before, you cannot have a situation where one employee is taking the money in, evaluating the checkbook, writing checks out to vendors. You can't have one person controlling all those different aspects of the business. And an auditor would come in and first of all would say you can't do that, but second of all would see if there was irregularities with cash flow in and out.
Yeah. The other thing is you don't want to you don't want to make it personal when you audit these things. People have to realize that this is the way business is done, and it's not a personal attack on somebody that you're going to question what they did. It's not about somebody's moral anything. This is business, and it's got to be looked at that way, and it's just a course of doing business. And every so often, you need to look at how everybody's doing things. Another big example I think we touched on a little earlier is somebody that never takes a vacation. Most employers would think that an employee that never wants to take a day off is the best employee I ever saw. Well, guess what? That's another gigantic red flag in our world. Because they don't want to take the day off because they don't want anybody else looking at their records and their books. And it's very important that more than one set of eyes is on everything at all times.
In fact, most banks in New York require their employees to take at least a week, sometimes 2 weeks, off a year. And not just take it off, but they can't come to work. Because you don't want someone coming to work and saying, well, let me just grab that, because that one piece of paper could be the piece of paper that reveals that they've been stealing. A number of cases we've had, the fraud is ongoing. Finally, the person falls ill, or they have a family member who's ill, and they have to be out of work for a while, and that is when the fraud gets detected, when they aren't there. So it's sort of good news for your employees. You say, look, I want you to go on vacation. You have to go on vacation. But then, I'm not saying you spend those 2 weeks to look through their desk, but just by dint of them not being there, that can sometimes be the best way for a fraud to be detected.
Another simple way is to change job duties every once in a while. Shift people's responsibilities around. And again, not as a matter of discipline or somebody's doing something wrong, but this is just the way we do business here. And it makes good business sense for a couple of reasons. One of them is nobody's in control of the same thing all the time, like we've been saying, and controls really are the issue. But the other reason is you end up with better, well-rounded employees that understand the overall operation much better in the end when they are able, and then when you have somebody that's sick or something, they can just jump into jobs and fill them. So there's a lot of really, really good reasons to move things around and change things up every once in a while, and it doesn't have to be because somebody's not doing a good job or somebody's feelings are getting hurt over it.
And even in today's age where everyone pays with a credit card or with an online transfer, you still have lots of cash that comes into a municipality. For example, it's just selling leaf bags at City Hall, or maybe you run a parking garage, or maybe you have people paying at the snack bar at the municipal pool. The cash receipts are always the weak point in any system. And they're also difficult for us because many times we have a case come in and the municipality will figure out, gee, we're missing a couple $100,000 because we looked at our cash flow over the last 10 years and we realized it went down. Okay, well, what happened? Well, there are two people, Bill and Chris, they handle the money. One of them must have stolen it. And I go, okay, that's great, but I can't just charge both of them and let the jury figure it out. We have to know who did it. And if you don't have cash controls in place, which we don't have time to go into exactly how you do that at this, but believe me, you need to have receipts, you need to have a paper trail, and if you don't have those things, it becomes very easy to steal, and it becomes very hard for us to even think about prosecuting.
Yeah, the criminal world makes that really difficult on us, and that's not a bad thing. But you mentioned a couple really big keys, and cash is always the problem, and the reason cash is a problem is that it doesn't create a paper trail. Checks and credit cards all have paper trails a mile wide and forever. They go back forever. The banks keep all their records. So the problem with the cash is there's not a paper trail. So one of the things you want to do with your controls in cash is make a paper trail. Require everyone to create a receipt for every dollar that comes into the place. And then control where the cash is stored during the day. You want to make sure that you know, just like a bank teller every day, nobody else is in that bank teller's drawer. You don't want 3 people going in and out of the same drawer because you'll end up with the situation Chris said. We'll be able to prove money's missing, but we won't be able to prove who took it, and neither will you. And the fact of the matter is if everybody's responsible for their own drawer, they're going to be much more careful with it. You'll avoid mistakes. You'll avoid these situations here, and you'll be lessening that opportunity. And again, that's one of the 3 things that has to exist. Opportunity that somebody has to believe that they're going to get away with it. Most people aren't going to steal money when they know they're going to get caught.
And the good news is cities, towns, villages, we've had many more cases involving private companies than we have had the government. So that's the good news, that actually government employees have shown a high level of honesty in our world, and the money hasn't been going out the door the way it does in a lot of small businesses. So in the end, if you need more information, or if you have a possible crime that you want to report, go to on the web, go to the find your closest local trooper barracks, and you can contact someone there, or of course your local police department. But there's always a New York State Police trooper barracks near you, and you can access that.
Yeah, the Comptroller's Office of the state has a division specifically for the municipalities that I'm sure everybody's aware of that, that helps with these kinds of things. And they could probably help you set up a program if you didn't have the money to bring in one of the internal auditors that comes in and does those things. The Comptroller is also a very good resource for those kinds of things.
Yeah, call them before they call you.
That's a great advice.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.